Hi guys, welcome back. Here's the Bitbugger. Today we're gonna do something amazing. We're going to install Mobian on our PinePhone. And the PinePhone, you really have so many options. It's really cool because you have an external SD card and you have an internal eMMC, which stands for Embedded Multimedia Card, which is, think of it like an internal hard drive. Think of it like it's your SSD or HDD or whatever. It's just a different kind of storage. And because you can put your OS on either the SD card or on the eMMC, this gives you great options. Because let's say you are a developer and you want to write an app for many different OSs and you want to try it on your PinePhone to really see how the UI, the user interface works out. So what you could do, you could put your software development stuff onto the eMMC and put your OS onto the SD card. And whenever you switch your SD card, and by that you switch your OS, you can always check the same application which is on the eMMC. So you can just swap the SD cards and by that swap the OSs. And so you can really very fast check out how it all works out. If you are not a developer, you just want to have your OS on the internal flash, which is the eMMC, because that's how you're used to it from your Android or iOS phone. You have the operating system on the phone itself, and your SD card is just some additional storage for big files like audio files, pictures, that kind of stuff. And because this scenario is more common for the average user, I will describe this this process of installing Mobian on the internal flash, which is the eMMC, and using the SD card as an additional storage. So let's get started. So let's install Mobian on our eMMC. And we do that using Jump Drive. And Jump Drive is a tool developed by Denk12 and Martin from PostmarketOS. So thanks to these guys for developing this awesome tool. And the second page or website you need for installation is of course mobian-project.org. That's where you get Mobian. And I'll put these links in the description below and put some additional links in the description as well. So let's start. Let's flash our eMMC with Jump Drive. So first step is download the Jump Drive image. And in order to do that, you click on this link. So this is the latest release. Make sure you always download the latest release. And what is very cool about this release is that it supports 3 GB model of the PinePhone. So let's get ahead. And here's the PinePhone image that we need. We save the file. So we download the file. And now we need to extract the file. And to do that, we first have to install xzutils. All right, that's done. And now on xz, so I have it in downloads, Pine64 image on xz. So that's done. As you could see now, it got unpacked. And now we can flash it to our eMMC. So there are actually a couple of ways how to connect your SD card to your computer. One of these ways is to use one of these USB adapters. An advantage of these USB adapters is you can very easily then mount your eMMC into virtual machines. And then there is the way to use one of these micro SD to SD adapters. And one thing to keep in mind with these adapters is they have a knob on the side, and this knob makes it possible to use the card in read-only mode. There are a couple of advantages for this in certain scenarios where you just want to read from the card and make it unable to write to the card. But in our case, of course, where we want to put files onto it, we have to enable write mode as well. I know with these SanDisk adapters, you have to pull it upwards to enable write mode as well. I guess it's a standard for these adapters to have the knob upwards for write mode access, but I can only guess, I don't know for sure. I can only encourage you to pull it upwards, plug it in, and try to create a folder in it and move a file onto it, and if it works, you can write to the card. If it's mounted in read-only mode, you will recognize that it's impossible to do these kind of things. So that's what you should keep in mind. And we can now flash the image onto our SD card. Before you plug in your SD card via your SD card adapter, run list block devices command. Now plug in your SD card and run the command again. And now you can see that there is a new block device. And this is our SD card. I plugged in my SD card via a USB adapter, and that's why it says SDB, because it's a USB device. If you put in your SD card via a micro SD to SD card adapter, and you slide that into your SD card slot from your computer, it doesn't say SDB, it says something like mmcblkX. I will show you that. See, now it says mmcblkX. And this is also your SD card. It's just a different name for it, so don't be confused by that. So we can now go ahead and flash our image onto our SD card. And to do that, we run sudo dd and we take a block size of 64K. The input file is our PinePhone Pine64 jump drive image. Our output file is our SD card, and here you plug in the name you did read over here, which in this case is SDB. Do not pick the name from any partitions. We write to the disk. This is the name that is important. SDB or mmcblkX. So SDB. We want the status. It just shows how the process is, and you hit enter. And it's written to the eMMC. And just one more thing, I do this video now the second time because I missed a very important command, and it's called sync. That's what you have to run now, and what it does is, I transfer the file, the image file, to the SD card. And it can happen, like with these very small files, that some bytes are still in the cache of the kernel and they are not yet written to the SD card. And if you run sync, the kernel does write all the data that is still in the cache, writes it to the SD card. And it's very important that you run it. If you don't do it, it may not work. And at this point, I want to thank the YouTuber LINMOBnet, who also does very cool videos about the PinePhone. You should go ahead and check out his channel. And I'm very grateful. He told me that the problem is with my failed attempt that I forgot to run this sync command after downloading the image onto the SD card. So what you can do now is remove the SD card, safely remove. The device can now be removed. And you can now go ahead and plug in the SD card, the micro SD card, into the PinePhone. There's one more thing I want to mention at this point. It is not necessary to format your SD card prior to running the dd command. It's not necessary because dd does a bit-to-bit or byte-to-byte copy from the image file to the SD card. So the dd command does really not care about file system or anything like that. It just dumps the bytes into the SD card. So you don't need to do any formatting or stuff like that, just so you know. And of course, what's pretty important actually, like after running this dd command, all the other data that was previously on this SD card is not accessible anymore, because most probably the file system and anything like that was overwritten with this command. So make sure you take a fresh card that is only being used for this purpose. So if you have any files on this SD card that you want to have, make a backup and then you can run this command, because all data on this card is lost after this command. So just you should know that. So let's plug in the SD card. Take the upper slot for it, the lower slot for the SIM card. So don't put it into the wrong slot. So let's boot it up. And here we go. Jump drive is running. And now what you can do is connect the USB cable onto it. And plug it in your computer. So we downloaded the jump drive image. We flashed the jump drive image to the micro SD card. We booted the PinePhone from the jump drive micro SD card. We connected the PinePhone to our computer using a USB-A, USB-C cable. And now we flashed the exposed PinePhone drive. Dev that's our eMMC. Check for the correct device and demessage. GNOME disks or similar, make sure it's unmounted with your chosen OS image. So what we do now, we run the list block device command again, and this is the SD card with the jump drive image on it, because you can see there's 49 megabytes and that's the jump drive image. So SDC is now the SD card, and SDB is our PinePhone eMMC. And that's the guy we want to flash with the Mobian image. So you can see now there are two partitions, because right now Manjaro is installed as the factory OS. And what we do now is we clear these two partitions, and I like gparted as a tool, so I encourage you to use gparted as well. So sudo apt install gparted. So gparted is now installed, so we can close that window, and there it is. Start it. So now we can select our device. So it's SDB. This is our PinePhone eMMC. And now you can see also in the label it's Manjaro. So it's a FAT16 file system boot partition and ext4 OS partition. So what we can do is delete these partitions and click apply. Are you sure you want to apply the panning operations? Adding partitions has the potential to cause loss of data. You're advised to back up your data before proceeding. I'm sure I know what I'm doing. Apply. All operations successfully completed. Awesome. We can now close it. And we have an unallocated eMMC. Awesome. Now it's all nice and fresh. And Manjaro is removed. And we can now install Mobian on it. So what we should do next is install Mobian. So you go to mobian-project.org. The link is also in the description below. And you click this button here and you're already there. And you click on PinePhone. And here's the Mobian PinePhone Phosh stable release. And this is the file that I want to download. It's about 1 GB big. So let's download Mobian. Save it. Awesome, our download is complete. One more thing I wanted to mention. It says here in the description, and make sure it's unmounted. That actually doesn't make any sense because we of course, the PinePhone drive is mounted, and that's perfectly fine. And also in the Debian installation guideline, it also says flash the exposed mounted PinePhone drive with Mobian image. So it's, of course, the PinePhone drive is now mounted. Yeah, so let's go ahead. So Mobian PinePhone. And what I also recognize, so it's a brand new image from yesterday. And yeah, so let's get ahead and flash Mobian onto our eMMC. So here we are again. Here you can see the file, it's zipped. So we need to unzip it, and to do that we run gzip -d for decompress. And we go to the file, Mobian image, and we run it. Awesome, it is now unzipped. So we can now go ahead and flash our Mobian image onto the PinePhone eMMC. So let's do it. We run sudo dd. We again take a block size of 64K. And the input file is the Mobian image, and the output file is device. And we pick now our eMMC disk, which in our case is SDB. And status progress. Let's run. All right, we transferred our Mobian image onto our PinePhone eMMC. But don't forget to sync. Very important here. So now we can shut down our PinePhone and take out the SD card, and we can then try to boot from the eMMC, and let's see if it works. But before we do all that, I just want to mention that the default user is Mobian and the default password is 1234. So that's very important here. And there it boots. All right, it's already done booting up. 1, 2, 3, 4, unlock. And it works. And we officially booted from our eMMC without an SD card. Isn't that amazing? Still, there's one more thing that we have to do, and that is get our SD card back working, because the jump drive image kind of messed up the SD card. So you have to run a couple commands to get it properly working again and to use it as an external storage. So what you do, of course, you insert your SD card, and again, in this case, it's called SDB. Here you can see it. And what you have to do is run sudo dd, the block size of 64K. The input file is devices 0, and the output file is again our SD card, and we want the status. So what it does is it just writes 0 to the SD card from the beginning of the SD card. And that is because the jump drive image got written to the first sectors, and even when you format the SD card, these sectors do not get erased. So we have to run sudo dd with the 0 device and write zeros to the first sectors of the SD card. So you run it, and you let it run for a couple seconds, for about 1 GB or so. Yeah, that should be fine. And with Control C, you can abort. Alright, so we wrote a couple of 0 bytes to the device, and now don't forget to run sync again. And now we can format our SD card. Let's look in gparted. Error fsyncing closing this input output error. Here it is. Alright, so we can say new, no partition table found. That's true because we erased it. Partition table is required before partitions can be added. To create a new partition table, choose the menu item device create partition table. So device create partition table, warning, this will erase all data on the entire disk. I know that. We pick GPT. So that worked. And now we want to try to make a new partition, and it works as well. That's awesome. So we make file system ext4, and everything else is fine. Add. And now apply. Apply. All operations successfully completed. That's great. Close it, and let's close gparted. And now we can eject the device, safely remove. That's great. And now we can pull out the SD card, put it back in the PinePhone, and boot it up. And let's check if our PinePhone sees this SD card as external storage. Alright, so here we go again. Let's put in the SD card, plug it in. We now got some practice doing that, I guess. Plug in the power cable and set it up. And it's booting. That's a very good sign, because if our SD card is corrupted, it won't boot anymore, because the first boot priority is the SD card, second boot priority is the eMMC. So that looks all good. And we're now going to check on the PinePhone itself if it recognizes the SD card. So password is 1234. We unlock it. And it's also super cool how fast it boots. And then we go to usage. And we go to storage. Oh, okay, it only shows the eMMC on this one, because the SD card is not mounted yet. But we can go into the terminal, and also run here list block devices command. You know that command by now, and it's awesome, and it shows our SD card. It says mmcblkX and with one partition, because we made one partition on it, and it says it all worked out. We're now done at this point. I'm really happy with this. So we flashed Mobian on our eMMC, and we can now also use the SD card that we used for jump drive as our external storage again. So thanks for watching, see you next time, and good luck doing it.